Welcome to Shashika's Astrological series. Uh, in this presentation, I'm going to talk about one of the exceptional cases in regard to getting married or marital relationships. We all know that there are the second house, the seventh house, fourth house, the seventh house, and the 12th house are mostly related to the marriage when it comes to in regard to the marriage, and the sixth house is in regard to how long the marital life will be like whether the native gets widow will become a widow or gets divorced. We use the sixth house to see that. And then there is another house called the eighth house, which is very unique, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this presentation. It's the eighth house that tells you whether the native gets married, what are the marriage that the native is going to get. Is that through a conventional way or an unconventional method? Conventional and unconventional methods depends from religion to religion, society to society, the environment, social environment to social environment. So in this topic, I'm going to talk about the unconventional marriage. The definition of unconventional will be defined in this topic is based upon the Indian environment in India, not the current India. It's the India that was the past, like before the 2000, the way the India used to be, the society in India used to be, the way the marriages were used to happen. Based on that, I am defining the word unconventional, and I am using that definition, using that as my definition of unconventional. I am analyzing the charts here to show how the eighth house lord or the planets in the eighth house play an important role when it comes to for a native to getting married in an unconventional form. For this video in presentation, I took the article that was published in Astrological magazine in November 2001. You can see the cover page where it tells you the source for this article and the time. It is November 2007. And then the topic in that magazine was the eighth house and unconventional marriages, and the article was published in that magazine, and I'm using that article in this article where the author has mentioned some rules for possible unconventional marriages. First and the foremost is the definition of unconventional marriage. As I said in my introduction, the definition unconventional is completely vague. What was seems to be unconventional few hundred years ago is now okay. Like for example, getting late marriages for women, for boys after the age of 18 was treated as unconventional in the 18th and 19th century, which is now okay. And getting a women widow, whether it's a women, especially in India, women widow getting remarried was assumed to be unconventional during the 18th and 19th century, which became a norm in 20th century. So the definition of unconventional is not static. That's the reason why when we try to explain whatever the unconventional marriage examples that I took it right now for this presentation may be true for right now, but maybe 5-10 years down the road it may not look like unconventional marriages. So since this article was published in 2001, which is almost 18 years ago, and fortunately in these 18 years the Indian society has changed so much that it's the society, the unconventional marriages that was mentioned here, like intercaste or interreligion or against not traditional, which comes to the love marriage or living together and then getting married afterwards. These are all not traditional to the Indian society, which were being considered as unconventional in 2000 or before 2000. It became a norm today in 2020. So please consider these examples only for educational purposes and do not emphasize on the definition of unconventional that I'm trying to explain here. Notice that from an astrological perspective, try to understand like whatever the norm during that period is, how these planets in the eighth house will impact it and make the native to go against the norm or against the society, the traditions in the society during that period only. Let's now start defining the role, how the eighth house roles plays an important role in unconventional marriages. According to the author published in the Astrological magazine in November 2001, according to the author, any affliction to the eighth house lord or afflictions to the eighth house itself or malefic planets residing in the eighth house. So the eighth house, look at it. Affliction to the eighth house lord, afflictions to the eighth house planets residing in the eighth house or malefic planets residing in the eighth house. These are the three things, and this should happen both in Rashi and Navamsa for the native. So if it happens in Rashi and does not happen in Navamsa, the rule does not work out. So when you take that, in both Rashi and Navamsa, if the eighth house lord got afflicted or planets in the eighth house got afflicted or the malefic planets are residing in the eighth house, then there is a high possibility, extremely high possibility for the native to get married using unconventional methods. So as I said in the introduction, the unconventional methods is very vague to define it, but right now for my research and for this presentation, I am considering the unconventional marriages as an intercaste marriage or an interreligion marriage. The other possible unconventional marriage is a male native marrying a female who is either a widow or a divorcee, and the vice versa too. So but right now I just got intercaste and interreligion, so I'm taking that as my examples and trying to explain to you. And there are a lot of Bollywood actors that fall under this criteria of getting an intercaste marriage or interreligion marriage, and I don't trust those type marriages. Those are like marriage of convenience, most of them, in my opinion. Personally, I think those are all marriage of convenience. So in Facebook Vedic astrology forums, I requested the people, the common people, to members, Facebook forum members, to post, to give any example of any of their relatives or friends who had an intercaste or interreligion marriage, and based upon the examples I picked up only those charts that falls under this, that suffice this rule, and that's what I'm going to present right now, and I'm going to explain to you in detail what is the rule, how does the from the chart, how does that rule is validated. Then you can understand when you are predicting the marriage for any native, how to use this rule. You will know how, by analysis you will know how I did it. Having said the rule and explained the rule, now let's start with providing some examples to show how to validate the rule, and how to interpret the rule defined or explained earlier. This is the first example I got it. This is the chart of a female Brahmin girl, had an intercaste marriage, arranged marriage, after much family tensions. So in the female chart, we'll start with it. The Lagnadipati sun in the Rashi, I'm talking about the Rashi chart. In Rashi chart, the Lagnadipati is Sun, and Sun is residing in his own house. That's very, very strong. That tells you the native, the female, how strong it is. Sun is a demanding one. And then comes the rule. In the rule, we have to look for what is the 8th house. The 8th house lord is Jupiter. The Jupiter, where is Lord Jupiter? 8th house Lord Jupiter residing. 8th house Lord Jupiter is residing in the 3rd house from Rashi Lagna, and it has co-joined with the malefic planet Mars. Thus, as per the rule, the 8th house Lord got afflicted. The next thing is which planets are there in the 8th house. The 8th house is empty, so no need. That second part of the rule is not there. Now let's look at the third part of the rule. Which planets are aspecting the 8th house? Saturn's direct aspect is on the 8th house. So you have the 8th house lord got afflicted by co-joining with Mars. Saturn is having a direct aspect on the 8th house. So 2 out of 3 rules in the 2 sub rules have been satisfied in the Rashi chart for this female chart. And now let's go to the male, to the Navamsa chart. In the Navamsa chart, oh great, the Lagnadipati is Mars, and Mars is residing in his own house. Look here, this is an amazing chart, I should say, from an astrological perspective. The Lagnadipati is Sun in Rashi chart, and the Lagnadipati is residing in his own house. In the Navamsa chart, the Lagnadipati is Mars, and Mars is residing in his own house. And now the 8th house lord is again Mars, and Mars residing in the first house, its 8th aspect is again on the 8th house. So one part of it, the 8th house lord is Mars, 8th house has been aspected by Mars. And what else do you need? Of course, the 8th house is empty. That's another point. So in both Rashi chart and the Navamsa chart for this female, 2 out of 3 sub rules have been satisfied. That tells you that there is a high possibility for this particular native to have an unconventional marriage. Now that we said that there is a high possibility for this particular native to have an unconventional marriage, what usually I do is when I say anything unconventional, the first thing I do is to go to the 9th house and look for the Dharmasthanamo, because the unconventional and Dharmasthanama are synonyms in my perspective. So let's see, in Rashi Lagna, in Rashi chart, the 9th house lord is Mars. That is it. And where is Mars? Mars is in the 3rd house, co-joined with the 8th house lord, and Mars direct aspect is again on the 9th house. So the 9th house, clearly the 2 bhavas, either the Bhagyasthanamo or the Dharmasthanamo, either of the 2 bhavas for the 9th house, one of them is going to get afflicted. Since we had found that the rule, based upon the rule, there is a high possibility for this particular native to have an unconventional marriage. In the 9th house, the bhava that is going to get afflicted is Dharmasthanamo, which means that the native will be going against the dharma at that time, whatever the time that the native was getting married, in that era, in that society, wherever the native is, against the society norms, which is adharma, and then will have an unconventional marriage. Let's now start with the second example. The second example, the chart is a male chart. The one that you are seeing here is a male chart. According to the feedback I got it from Facebook astrology forums, this male is belongs to a Brahmin family, and the male had an affair with a non-Brahmin girl, and finally the girl got married. Had an arranged marriage. So the question comes is, what was the reason for the this male native, to have an unconventional marriage, which is an inter-caste marriage? Now let's start looking at the rule. Says that we have to emphasize on the 8th house and the 8th house lord, and the planets that are residing in the 8th house, and the planets that are aspecting the 8th house. start with it. So Mars, Lagnadipati is Venus, and Mars is in the first house. So the Mars residing in the first house, Mars has the three aspects: the fourth, seventh, and eighth. So since Mars is in the first house, that indicates that's the eighth house. Mars has an eighth aspect on the eighth house. So Mars has had a impact on the eighth house, first one. Second, which planets are there in the eighth house? If you look at the Rashi chart, the planets that are in the eighth house are Venus, Mercury, and Saturn. There you go. Saturn, remember the rule says as Mars, Saturn, or Rahu. One of these three planets. You have Mars residing in the first house, aspecting the eighth house, and Saturn is residing itself in the eighth house. So the rule is enough for us to say that two of the conditions in the rule has been satisfied in the Rashi chart for a possibility of an unconventional marriage. Now let's go to the Navamsa chart. In Navamsa chart, Lagnadipati is Sun, Mercury is there. So from Leo, the eighth house is Pisces, yes. And who is in Pisces? The Lord of the eighth house Lord is Jupiter. So we need to see where is the Lord Jupiter. Eighth house Lord Jupiter residing. Eighth house Lord Jupiter is co-joined with Saturn there in Sagittarius. That is also the house owned by Jupiter. So one of the rule has been sufficed is that the eighth house Lord got afflicted by co-joining with Saturn. And the next rule is who is in the eighth house. Mars itself is in the eighth house. So the two rules in Rashi chart, according to the Rashi chart, we found two rules being sufficed. In the Navamsa chart also, we found two rules to be sufficed. So the condition, what else is that there's a high possibility for this particular native to get have an unconventional marriage. Out of curiosity, what I did is I started looking at the ninth house also, which is Dharmasthanamo. An unconventional marriage, in my perspective, is adharma. It can be considered to be an adharma. So what is the ninth house? So the ninth house from in Rashi Lagna, Rashi chart, the ninth house Lord, Dharmasthanadipati is Saturn, the malefic planet. The one that we are talking about, Saturn, Mars, or Rahu, is what we have mentioned in the rule. So the Dharmasthanadipati itself is a Saturn, and the Saturn itself is residing in the eighth house. And in ninth house, you see Rahu there. So this clearly tells you that the ninth house, Dharmasthanamu or Bhagyasthanamu, got afflicted. So either for this particular male native, either the Bhagyasthanamu will be getting afflicted or the Dharmasthanamu will be getting afflicted. Either of those, both won't happen. That when any ninth house got spoiled, either the Dharmasthanamu or the Bhagyasthanamu will get afflicted. Due to the affliction, one of that will be spoiled. And here, because the rule has been, two conditions in that rule has been satisfied, and there is a high possibility for the native to have an unconventional marriage. In the ninth house, it's the Dharmasthanamu that got afflicted, and that's what you see here. The native is marrying and having an inter-caste marriage, which is against the Dharma during the period. Let's now talk about the third example. This is the example of a male chart. This chart you're seeing here is a male native, and according to the feedback I got from the person, this native had an inter-caste marriage. So now let's start analyzing the chart. First analyze the chart and then see how the rule is, and then we will validate the rule on this chart. For this native, the Lagnadipati is Jupiter. The very first thing is the first house Lord is Jupiter. Now go all the way to the eighth house. The eighth house Lord is Venus. Okay, so let's go and see where are in the eighth house Lord is Venus. Venus is in the sixth house. That's the first thing. Okay, there's nothing, let's just try to analyze what do we know first. And then in the eighth house, you have Moon and Saturn. So the three planets that we always look at in the rule is the Saturn, Mars, and Rahu. So the first rule is Who is the eighth house lord? The eighth house lord is Venus. So it's not, it's that particular condition is not satisfied. Second thing, if the eighth house planets residing the eighth house are afflicted or have Mars, Saturn or Rahu. We have Saturn in the eighth house. Okay, and then eighth house gets afflicted due by any aspects from Saturn, Mars or Rahu. That's the third condition. So the from Mars, natal Mars, the fourth aspect is on the eighth house. So out of three conditions, two were being satisfied in the Rashi Lagna, Rashi chart. The two conditions that were satisfied are eighth house, Saturn is residing in the eighth house, and Mars fourth aspect is on the eighth house where Saturn is residing. So in the Rashi chart, out of three conditions, two were successful, were been satisfied. Now let's go to the Navamsa chart. In Navamsa chart, the first thing is the Lagnadipati is Mars itself. Okay, and from Mars, what's the Lagna is Scorpio. So from Scorpio, the eighth house is Lord is Mercury, and the eighth house is empty. So now let's go and see where is the eighth house Lord Mercury. Eighth house Lord Mercury is in Lagna, but the eighth house Lord Mercury has co-joined with Saturn. There you go. That's the reason. So but the condition that has been sufficed is the eighth house Lord got afflicted. That's the first thing. And there is no planets in the eighth house, and if you look at the aspects, no malefic planet like Rahu or Mars or Saturn are aspecting the eighth house or eighth house lords. The only condition that has been satisfied here is the eighth house lord is co-joined with Saturn. So according to the rule in Rashi, you have two conditions satisfied. In Navamsa, you got one condition satisfied. So the planetary combinations tells that there is a high possibility, it's not guaranteed, there's a high possibility for the native to have an unconventional marriage. And then comes the question is, the word unconventional can also be, the synonym for unconventional can be adharma too. So let's go and look at the ninth house, which is the Dharmasthanamo. The ninth house is in Rashi Lagna. The ninth house is 7th, 8th and 9th. The ninth house lord is Mars, one of the malefic planet that we are considering in the rule. And then the Lagnadipati Jupiter is residing in the ninth house, and Rahu is having a direct aspect on the ninth house. So because of this malefic planet owning the ninth house, and because the Rahu is having a direct aspect on the ninth house, and that too on the Lagnadipati, the ninth house gets afflicted. So ninth house bhava talks about two things, Bhagyasthanamo or Dharmasthanamo. So for this particular native, one of these is going to have an impact, either the Bhagyasthanamo or the Dharmasthanamo. And now based upon the rule, the native is going to, possibility is very high for the native to have an unconventional marriage, unconventional type of a marriage. So based on taking that into consideration, the ninth house, it is the Dharmasthanamo that will get spoiled. And that's exactly what happened for this particular native. The native had an inter-caste marriage, which is unconventional. Maybe at the time the native got married, it is unconventional. Now that I completed the analysis of three examples showing how the rule has been validated, as I told earlier, for every rule there will be some exceptions, and here is this example. I'm going to show you the exception. The rule has been satisfied, but the event did not happen. As I said in my introduction, the planetary combinations only provide you the native an opportunity for an event to happen. They don't guarantee you that event to happen. They just provide you an opportunity to event for an event to happen, and it's up to the native to figure it out whether to make that event happen or not. If it is a bad event, the native has to take necessary precautionary steps. If it's a good event, the native has to make sure that the native uses the opportunity so that something good in the life happens. Now, in this example, this is an exception. This is my own chart. So now what the rule says? The rule says that if the eighth house lord got afflicted, and the affliction is only through three planets: Saturn, Mars, or Rahu. So if the eighth house lord got afflicted through any of these three planets, or the eighth house got afflicted through any of these three planets in both Rashi and Navamsa, then there is a possibility for an unconventional marriage. Now let me go and look at my own chart. The left side is the Rashi chart and the right side is the Navamsa chart. In the Rashi chart, the Lagna Adhipati is Mercury, so the eighth house lord is Mars. Okay, it has satisfied. So the eighth house lord itself is Mars. Mars is in the ninth house, Dharmasthanam. So the eighth house lord residing in the Dharmasthanam and Mars being the house lord indicates that some sort in my life some event will be happening which is adharma, which tends to be which mostly inclined to adharma. And now in the eighth house, this seventh house lord Jupiter is residing. See, in the eighth house there's a seventh house lord Jupiter is residing, and Saturn residing in the sixth house. Its third aspect is on the eighth house. So the whatever the planet that is already the seventh house lord Jupiter is a Marakasthanadhipati. Jupiter is residing in the eighth house. So residing in the eighth house itself makes the planets afflicted. And now it is being using the third aspect of Saturn. It got further afflicted. So the planet in the eighth house got afflicted by Saturn. The eighth house lord is Mars, and the eighth house lord Mars is residing in the ninth house, the Dharmasthanam. So when you look at the Rashi, the rule has been satisfied. Now let me go to the Navamsa. In Navamsa, again, the Lord Lagnadhipati is again Mercury. In both Rashi and Navamsa, the Lagnadhipati is same, Mercury only. And from there, the eighth house lord is Saturn. Saturn is residing in its own house. Mars is residing in the eighth house from Navamsa too. And Saturn's third aspect is on the Lagnadhipati Mercury. So when you look at it, even in the Navamsa also, the rule got satisfied. This is the chart. So when people who see the rule and look at my chart, they can say directly that this chart is the best example for an unconventional marriage. But the actual reality is my marriage was a normal arranged marriage within our own caste, actually a close family member. So it has nothing to do with this rule. So this is an exception. Now the question comes is, how did it become an exception when all the rules are satisfied? Like I said earlier, the rules only give the planetary combinations an opportunity for that event to happen. It is up to the native to figure it out whether to let that event happen or not. As personally, as I am not interested in any of these unconventional marriages, whether it is inter-caste or inter-religion or whatever it is, at that age, when I was 24, 25 or 26, at that age I didn't have the intention of having such sort of unconventional marriage. So since I was not ready emotionally and mentally, even though the planetary combinations had provided me the opportunity, as a native I did not show any interest. So the combination, whatever the opportunity was there, it failed. So this is the best way for me to explain to you that just because the planetary combinations offers an event to happen doesn't mean that it is sure to happen. It just gives you an opportunity, and it is up to the native to figure it out whether to take the opportunity, avail that opportunity. If it is good opportunity, use it and make sure that the plan, so it's like 20% is from planetary combination side and 80% is from your side, something like that. So it's like a understanding between the planetary combinations that is providing the opportunity and the native who is trying to make sure that whatever the opportunities provided has been used, had been properly used. I hope this exception will clearly give an enlighten the people, saying that please don't become don't have the negative, sorry, the preconceived notion that just because you have a planetary combinations, you that whatever the result that planetary combinations are going to give will happen. Please do understand that it is that the native role plays a, no, the native's part plays a vital role when any of the event has to go through. Let me conclude saying that the rule that has been explained until now is only a possibility for the event to happen, and it's a native has to take enough responsibility to take an effort to make the event to happen. If the event is a positive one, to make the effort to event to happen. If the event is a negative, has to make an effort to minimize the negative event to happen. Here these rules are meant only for understanding the possibilities of something to happen. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something from this presentation. Thank you very much.